My friends, I want to tell you today, it is no accident. It is no coincidence. My friend, I believe that when a loved one visits you in a dream, it is a reminder, a whisper from eternity, a gentle nudge from the Almighty Himself, calling you to remember the love, the lessons, the life that person lived. When a loved one appears in your dreams, it is not just a random occurrence. It is a moment that touches the soul, a stirring deep within that cannot be ignored. So often we go through life consumed by the rush of our daily routines, carrying the burdens of this world and forgetting that there is something greater beyond what we see. But in the stillness of the night, when the distractions fade away, God has a way of reaching into the heart. He speaks in ways we may not always understand, but His presence is undeniable. All throughout history, we have seen that God has used dreams as a way to communicate with His people. He used them to reveal truth, to bring warning, to offer comfort, and to stir hearts toward Him. And even today, in the quiet places of our sleep, He still speaks. When a loved one appears in your dreams, it may very well be God's way of reminding you of something important. Maybe He is calling you to remember the love that person gave, the lessons they taught, or the example they set in life. Perhaps He is using their presence to encourage you in a time of struggle, to remind you that you are not alone, that His love is still with you. There are times when we are burdened with grief, when we long for one more conversation, one more embrace, one more moment with someone who has gone on before us. And in those moments of longing, a dream may come. Their face appears, their voice is clear, and for just a moment, we feel the nearness of their presence again. But this is not just the working of the mind. This is often a gift from God, a way He allows our hearts to be comforted. It is a reminder that love does not end with this life, that though we are separated for now, there is a greater plan beyond what we can see. But a dream is not just about looking back, it is also about looking forward. It may be a call to action, a nudge from God to take hold of something you have been neglecting. Maybe there was something unfinished between you and that person, words left unspoken, forgiveness not given, or a lesson they tried to teach that you have yet to embrace. God may be using that moment in your dream to stir your spirit, to remind you that life is precious, that time is a gift, and that there are things He wants you to do while you still have the chance. In those moments when a loved one appears, do not dismiss it as mere coincidence. Take it as a prompting, a whisper from God, a call to reflect, to remember, and to draw closer to Him. Because He is always speaking, always reaching out, and always working in ways beyond our understanding. Dreams may be one of the ways He reminds us that His love never fails, His promises never fade, and His presence is always near. Throughout history, God has used many ways to communicate with His people. He has spoken through the prophets, through signs and wonders, through His Word, and yes, through dreams. When we look at the Scriptures, we see again and again that God has chosen dreams as a way to reveal His will, to bring warnings, to offer comfort, and to guide His people in the way they should go. Dreams are not random, nor are they meaningless. They are often a tool through which God reaches into the depths of the human heart to stir something that needs to be awakened. In the Old Testament, we see how God spoke to Joseph through dreams, revealing His divine plan for the future. Though his brothers rejected him, though he suffered trials and hardships, the dream remained in his heart as a promise from God. And in time, that dream was fulfilled. We see how God warned Pharaoh through a dream, giving him insight into the famine that was to come so that Egypt could prepare. We see how God instructed Daniel, giving him wisdom and understanding through visions of the night, showing him things to come and revealing His power over the kingdoms of the earth. Dreams were not just passing thoughts, they were divine messages, a means by which God made His will known. In the New Testament, we see the same pattern. When Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus, was troubled about taking Mary as his wife, God sent an angel to him in a dream, telling him not to be afraid, for what was happening was from the Lord. When danger threatened the child Jesus, God spoke again through a dream, warning Joseph to flee to Egypt for safety. Pilate's wife, though she was not among the followers of Christ, was troubled by a dream concerning Jesus, a sign that even those outside the faith could be given divine insight through dreams. If God used dreams to speak to His people then, why would He not still use them today? He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. There are moments when we may feel distant from God, when the noise of life drowns out His voice, but in the stillness of sleep, when our hearts are at rest, He can speak in ways we may not expect. He can remind us of things we need to hear. He can bring back memories, lessons, and truths that we have forgotten. When a loved one appears in a dream, it is not always just the mind recalling old memories. It may be a moment God is using to stir something in your soul. It may be a way He is reminding you of their love, of their faith, of the example they set, calling you to reflect on what truly matters. The same God who spoke to His people through dreams in the past still speaks today. And if He allows a loved one to come into your dreams, there is always a purpose behind it. When a loved one appears in your dreams, it may not be just a memory or a passing thought. It could be something far deeper, something beyond the natural, something that touches the very core of your spirit. So often, in the busyness of life, we get caught up in the demands of the present, focusing on what is right in front of us. But there are moments when God allows something from the past to re-enter our minds, not to burden us, but to remind us. A dream about a loved one can be more than just nostalgia. It can be a sign of comfort, encouragement, or even guidance. There are times in life when grief weighs heavily upon the heart. The loss of someone dear can leave a wound that time alone cannot heal. In those moments of sorrow, in those nights of loneliness, a dream may come. You see their face, hear their voice, and for a fleeting moment, the separation that felt so final no longer seems so distant. The heart feels lighter, the burden a little less heavy, and though the dream fades as morning comes, something remains. An unexplainable peace, a sense that they are not truly gone, that love has not been extinguished by death. God is a God of comfort. He knows the pain of loss. He understands the human heart in a way no one else ever could. And He has ways of reaching us when we need it most. Just as He speaks through His Word, just as He speaks through His Spirit, He can also speak through dreams. If He allows a loved one to come into your dream, it may be His way of reminding you that you are not alone. It may be His way of saying, I see your pain, I know your sorrow, and I am with you. There are also times when a dream of a loved one comes not just to bring comfort, but to bring clarity. Perhaps there is something in your heart that remains unsettled, something left unsaid, something left undone. Maybe there was a lesson they tried to teach that you did not fully understand at the time. Maybe there was a word of wisdom they spoke that you have forgotten. And now when you least expect it, they appear in a dream, and suddenly something clicks. Something that once seemed unclear now makes sense. It is not the loved one themselves who is delivering the message, but God using the memory of their presence to stir something within you, to call you towards something greater, to awaken a truth that had been dormant for too long. Dreams have a way of breaking through the walls we build around our emotions. They bypass the distractions, the noise, the resistance of our waking minds, and they speak directly to the soul. When a loved one appears in a dream, it may be a divine reminder that their love, their influence, and their presence in your life were never in vain. When a loved one appears in a dream, it is not always just a memory resurfacing. It can be a call to reflect on the life they lived, the lessons they imparted, and the example they set. Too often people rush through life without stopping to consider the impact of those who came before them. But God has a way of bringing those reminders at just the right time. A dream can serve as a gentle prompting, a moment to pause and think about what truly matters, to remember the wisdom and values that were passed down, and to consider how those things are being carried forward. Every life leaves behind a legacy, whether good or bad, strong or weak. The choices made, the words spoken, the love given, and the faith lived out do not simply disappear when someone leaves this world. They remain in the hearts of those who knew them, and sometimes, in the quiet of the night, when the mind is at rest and the heart is most open, God allows a reminder to come. A face reappears, a voice is heard, a scene unfolds, and suddenly, memories that seemed distant become vivid once again. It is not a coincidence. It is an opportunity to reflect. Maybe that person was a guiding figure in your life, someone whose presence gave strength, whose words encouraged, whose actions demonstrated kindness, integrity, and faith. Maybe their life was one of perseverance, showing what it meant to trust God even in the hardest of times. When they appear in a dream, it may be a prompting to ask yourself, are you living out those same values? Are you walking in the path they showed you? Are you carrying on the legacy of love, of faith, of wisdom that they left behind? Or perhaps their presence in the dream serves as a reminder of something unfinished. Maybe there were conversations left unspoken, apologies that were never made, forgiveness that was never given. God may use the image of a loved one in a dream to bring those things to the surface, not to cause guilt or regret, but to call for action in the present. Is there someone you need to reconcile with? Is there a lesson from that person's life that you need to embrace? Is there a change that needs to be made in your own heart, inspired by what they stood for? Sometimes a dream of a loved one is not just about remembering them, it is about looking inward. It is about asking what kind of legacy you are building in your own life. One day others will look back on the example you set. They will remember your words, your actions, your faith. What will they see? What will they carry with them? God brings these reminders not just to comfort, but to awaken, to stir the heart toward a greater purpose, to remind you that every life leaves an imprint, and that what you do with your time on this earth matters. When a loved one comes into your dreams, it is not something to be dismissed as mere imagination. It is a moment that speaks to the heart, a stirring deep within the soul that calls for reflection. There are times in life when we are too busy, too distracted, too burdened by the cares of the world to hear what God may be trying to say. But in the quiet of sleep, when all the noise of the day has faded, He can reach us in ways we may not expect. A dream can be a reminder, a lesson, a comfort, or even a call to action. It is not always about the past. It can be about the present and even the future. There are moments in life when God uses dreams to remind us of His presence. When you see a loved one in a dream, it may be God's way of saying, I am with you. Maybe you have been feeling lost, uncertain, or alone. Maybe you have been struggling with grief, missing the presence of that person, wondering if their life truly mattered, wondering if they are at peace. And then, in the stillness of the night, they appear, not in a way that brings fear or sorrow, but in a way that fills your heart with warmth, with love, with a peace that cannot be explained. That is not an accident. That is not the mind playing tricks. That is a gift, a gentle assurance that love never truly dies, that the impact of a life well lived continues on, that the bonds of faith and family are not broken by death. Sometimes a dream of a loved one comes as a lesson. Perhaps there was something they stood for, something they tried to teach, something they lived out in a way that left an impression. And now, in this moment when you need it most, that lesson is brought back to your mind. Maybe it is a lesson about faith, about perseverance, about the importance of family, about the way to live a life of integrity and purpose. God has a way of bringing back those lessons when they are needed, when the heart is ready to receive them, when there is something in your life that needs to be realigned with His truth. There are also times when a dream of a loved one serves as a wake-up call. Perhaps there are things in your life that have been neglected, relationships that need healing, priorities that need to be reshaped, faith that needs to be reignited. When you see that person, when their presence lingers in your heart, even after the dream fades, it may be God's way of urging you to take action. It may be a reminder that life is short, that the time to love, to forgive, to make things right is now. It may be a call to live in such a way that honors the legacy of those who have gone before, to walk in the footsteps of faith they laid down, to continue the journey they started but could not finish. When a loved one appears in your dreams, it is not something to take lightly. It is not simply a wandering thought of the mind, but often a moment of divine reflection. It is a stirring of the soul, a whisper from beyond, a reminder that life is more than what we see. There are times when we are so consumed by the present, by the weight of our responsibilities, by the burdens of this world, that we fail to remember the greater reality. And in those quiet moments of sleep, when the distractions of life have faded away, God may use a dream to remind us of something we need to see, something we need to hear, something we need to feel deep within our hearts. There are times when a dream of a loved one comes to bring comfort. The loss of someone dear is never easy, and though time moves forward, the ache of absence never fully disappears. There are nights when sorrow lingers, when memories feel too distant, when the longing to hear their voice, to see their smile, to feel their presence becomes overwhelming. And then, just when the heart is heaviest, they appear in a dream. Not in a way that brings fear or sadness, but in a way that brings peace, a gentle reassurance, a quiet reminder that they are not truly gone, that the love they carried in this life is not lost, that what they meant to you is still alive in your heart. It is a moment where the veil between this world and eternity feels thinner, where the soul is reminded that love does not fade, that God's promises are true, that there is more beyond this life. Other times, a dream of a loved one may serve as a reminder. Perhaps they stood for something greater, something honorable, something worth remembering. Maybe they were a person of faith, of strength, of wisdom, and their presence in your dream is not just a comfort, but a calling to live in a way that reflects the values they held dear, to carry forward the lessons they left behind, to walk the path they once walked with the same devotion and purpose. It is easy to forget the guidance of those who have gone before us, to drift away from the truths they once spoke into our lives. But when God allows their presence to return in a dream, it may be His way of bringing those lessons back to the surface, of stirring the heart to reflect, to realign, to remember what truly matters. There are also times when a dream of a loved one comes as a warning, a gentle urging to pay attention. Perhaps there is an area of life that has been neglected, a decision that needs to be made, a change that must take place. God does not speak through dreams to bring fear or confusion, but to awaken the heart to something important. It may be a sign to slow down, to seek His guidance, to make peace where peace is needed, to turn back where the path has gone astray. When a loved one appears in a dream, it is not a random occurrence. It is not something that happens by accident or coincidence. It is a moment that carries meaning, a moment that speaks beyond the physical realm, a moment that reaches deep into the heart and soul. Too often people dismiss their dreams as fleeting thoughts of the subconscious, as memories playing themselves out in the quiet of the night. But there are times when a dream is more than just a memory. It is a message, a reminder, a prompting that should not be ignored. There are times when a dream of a loved one brings comfort. Life is filled with loss, and the pain of missing someone never truly fades. Time may pass, days may turn into years, but the longing to see them again, to hear their voice, to feel their presence remains. And then, in the stillness of the night, they appear. Not as a ghost, not as a mere fragment of thought, but as a presence that feels real, that fills the heart with warmth, that brings a peace beyond understanding. It is a reminder that they are not forgotten, that the love they gave still lingers, that their life mattered and still holds significance in yours. It is a moment where heaven feels closer, where eternity feels real, where the unseen becomes tangible. Sometimes a dream of a loved one is a reminder of the values they lived by. Perhaps they were a person of great faith, someone who walked with integrity, someone who loved deeply, someone who left behind a legacy worth remembering. When they appear in a dream, it may be God's way of bringing those values back into focus, of stirring the heart to ask, are you living in a way that honors what they stood for? Are you carrying forward the lessons they taught, the example they set, the faith they embraced? It is easy to drift away from the things that truly matter, to become consumed with the worries of life, to lose sight of what is most important. But when God allows a dream like this, it is often a call to reflect, to realign, to remember. There are also times when a dream of a loved one is a prompting to take action. Perhaps there is unfinished business, words left unspoken, forgiveness that was never given. Maybe there is a relationship that needs mending, a step of faith that needs to be taken, a burden that needs to be lifted. God uses moments like these to stir the heart, to guide the soul, to bring awareness to things that need attention. It may be a reminder to cherish the people still in your life, to live each day with purpose, to walk in a way that reflects the love and wisdom of those who came before. It may be a call to turn back to the path of righteousness, to seek God's guidance, to live in a way that ensures when your time comes, your own legacy will be one worth remembering. When a loved one appears in your dreams, it is not an accident. It is not a meaningless flicker of memory or a random thought passing through the night. It is something deeper, something greater, something that speaks to the heart in a way that words cannot fully capture. In moments like these, the veil between the physical and the eternal seems thin, and the presence of someone we once knew and loved feels so real, so tangible, that it leaves us wondering what it all means. There are those who dismiss dreams as nothing more than the mind processing past experiences, but there are times when God uses them to reach us, to remind us, to comfort us, and even to guide us in ways we may not expect. Sometimes a dream of a loved one is a gentle reassurance. Life can be heavy, and grief is something that never truly disappears. The absence of someone we love leaves an emptiness, a quiet ache that lingers even as the world continues moving forward. There are moments when we long to see them, to hear them, to be reminded that they are at peace. And then, in the quiet of the night, they appear, not in a way that stirs fear, not in a way that brings sadness, but in a way that fills the heart with warmth. It is as if God is whispering, "They are not lost, and neither are you." It is a reminder that love does not fade, that the soul endures beyond this life, that the bonds formed on this earth are not broken by death. It is a moment of peace, a moment of assurance that God's promises are true, that there is more beyond what we can see. Other times, a dream of a loved one comes as a reminder. Perhaps they lived a life of faith, of integrity, of kindness, of wisdom. Perhaps they taught lessons not just with words, but with the way they lived, with the way they loved, with the way they carried themselves through the trials of life. And now, when you need it most, their presence is brought back to your mind, not just as a memory, but as a calling to carry forward what they stood for, to live in a way that honors their legacy, to hold on to the values they embraced. God has a way of using these moments to stir the soul, to bring clarity to what has been forgotten, to call the heart back to what truly matters. There are also times when a dream of a loved one is a wake-up call. Maybe there are things in life that need to be addressed, things left undone, words left unsaid. Maybe there is forgiveness that needs to be given, a relationship that needs to be mended, a decision that needs to be made. God speaks in many ways, and when He allows someone to appear in a dream, it may be His way of prompting you to take action, to set things right, to walk in obedience, to make the most of the time you have.